Hey guys, thank you for checking out the video. My name is G, you're watching Keeping This Tech. And in this video, we're unboxing and setting up the Apple TV 4K. This is Apple's 4K streaming set-top box. They're late to the party, but man did they show up with style. So you might be the type of person that will never buy physical media, or maybe you are and you also want the best image possible when you're streaming content. Well, this is the box to get. Back in September, Apple announced a new Apple TV 4K. Now, even though they had announced price matching and free upgrades, it still wasn't enough for me to want to pick one of these up. Now, that wasn't until a few other things happened outside of Apple that caught my attention. First being Movies Anywhere became available. Movies Anywhere is a spinoff of Disney's Anywhere service. Now with Movies Anywhere, you can purchase and redeem digital codes. In fact, if you're going to be redeeming digital codes moving forward, it's going to be through Movies Anywhere. But you can also link all of your accounts that you purchase and redeem digital movies from, like iTunes, Amazon Prime, Vudu, Google Play. Now, once your accounts are linked, all of your purchases will show up on those different platforms, given that they're part of the participating studios. The great news is that almost all of the major studios are on board. The second being Amazon Prime Video became available. And there's tons of TV shows, tons of movies available on Amazon Prime Video. And finally, back to Apple, they released a software update 11.2, which addressed a major issue for me. Now with all of that in play, I figured it was time for me to give this thing a shot, check it out, bring it in, unbox it for you guys, and test it out for myself. And there we are, voila, there's your Apple TV and the remote for this gen. Now honestly, this remote control feels and looks exactly like last year's model, except for the fact that there's this white ring around the menu button. But aside from that, it's the same remote. And here's your Apple TV with the Apple TV branding on there. There's a vent on the bottom. We're gonna look at that a little closer in just a bit. We have paperwork, the lightning cable, and this is the power cable. So that's pretty much it. Pretty simple unboxing as far as the Apple TV is concerned. There's not that much that comes along with it. All right, cool. So taking a look at the Apple TV, I'm gonna go ahead and unwrap this here. There's this black kind of tape around here that's to protect the sides, because this is a real scratch magnet, fingerprint magnet. And now on the ports, you have your power, your HDMI, and a gigabit Ethernet port. That's powerful stuff, man. And speaking of powerful, there's an A10X chip that's powering this. The same chip that's found in the iPad Pros for 2017. Very, very capable silicon, if you will. So that's powering all of the streaming and everything that you're gonna see in 4K HDR. There's an upscaler in here that's really great for taking HD content to near 4K. Does an amazing job. Okay, so for this part of the video, I'm just gonna go over some video settings that I found that enhance my viewing experience, and maybe it might help you guys out. But before I do, I just wanted to show you guys something real quickly. In the TV app under Library, if you go in there, you can actually see all the TV shows and movies that you own. By default, the Apple TV does output 4K, HDR, and at 60 frames per second. So under the default setting, you're able to see a filtered view of all of the 4K HDR movies that you have in your iTunes library. Now, notice the numbers here. Under 30 movies that I have that are available in 4K HDR. That means 70% of my movies are not in 4K. Now, some of them might get upgraded automatically, but most of them won't, because if I've actually purchased them outside of Apple or even redeemed them outside of Apple, they're gonna remain the HD version and they will not be upgraded to the 4K HDR versions. Only movies that you've purchased through Apple iTunes will be upgraded, so that's something to note. Now, be that as it may, as I pointed out earlier, the interface is at 60 frames per second, and to be honest with you, it needs to be. I get it. It is silky smooth. It's really, really fast, and it makes sense that the interface should be. I mean, you'll see how quick everything moves, right? I mean, it's buttery smooth, and that has a lot to do with the A10X chip that is powering this thing. But I'm gonna make some tweaks here, and I'm gonna show you what I mean. I'm gonna go ahead and set that up so the Apple TV will behave just like my other devices. So if you go into video and audio under settings, you go into the format, 4K HDR, click on that, and you'll notice that you have some options here for the different frame rates. Now, I like the 60 frames per second for the interface, so I'm gonna leave that there, but I'm gonna change 4K HDR to 4K SDR. And you'll notice that the light output will dim. I'm gonna go ahead and confirm that I want that. You notice it's a darker image here, and that's absolutely fine because this is only affecting the user interface. Now, as soon as an HDR movie is on, it'll pump out HDR content with the settings that we're about to set here. But again, this is SDR for the user interface. And that's fine, because what ends up happening is if I go watch an HD movie, which most of my movies, as you've seen, are in HD, and then the reality is there's more HD content than HDR content, it's not going to be a letdown. So I'll go ahead and do that. But anyway, you want to go right in here to where it says matching content. You want to turn this on if it's not on already by default. In some cases it might be on, in some cases it's not. Also turn on the frame rate. And then as soon as you do that, if there's a movie that's again in HDR, it'll show it in HDR despite your user interface being set to SDR. And also if the movie is in 24 frames per second, it'll play it in 24 frames per second. So that's pretty much it. This is where you'd also set up your audio. At the time of this recording, Dolby Atmos is not available. Apple has promised to support that format in the future, but as of this recording, again, it is still not here. Now, one other thing I discovered is that let's say you purchase a movie, a 4K movie on iTunes, through any of your devices, your 4K playback will only happen on the Apple TV 4K. Even if you have a 5K iMac or one of the new iPhone 10s that does support 4K playback, your playback only happens in 4K on the Apple TV. So it's just something to keep in mind. Also, despite the Apple TV having storage configurations of 32 gigs or 64 gigs, none of the movies that you purchase actually ever download and save on your Apple TV. It's only streaming. It seems that they're preserving all of the storage for the apps and the games. So something to also consider and to know when you're picking something like this up. Anyway, guys, thank you for sticking with me through this entire video. This is your boy G. You've been watching Keeping This Tech. Please make sure to leave a comment, subscribe, like. If these settings are not to your liking, or if you have something else that you've set up, feel free to share it. I'd love to hear it, love to see it. It's all gravy. I do want to say, consider sharing this video with anybody that has an Apple TV or is considering getting an Apple TV if you think that this video might be helpful to them. Anyway, Happy New Year. I didn't get a chance to say that at the beginning of the video. Now, with that said, shout out to all the new subscribers. I'm out. Peace.